Okay, so this slide captures every single thing that I'll be talking about today. And this has to do with what you have to do before you start applying to schools. Now, preparing your application materials, that is one of the most important things you need to get together. And here, well, most of us here are Nigerians. We know how, at times we could get delays when it comes to like getting some of your documents from institutions, from the government and all of that. And you do not want that to be the reason why you would miss out on an application. So I'm going to say this now, and I would emphasize it again. Start early. When it comes to your application, start early. You can never be too early, but you can be late. No matter the application session you're trying to target or work towards, please start early. Start gathering all of the materials you will need right now. And what are the materials you will need? We'll get into that in a second. Now, after you gather the application materials, after you've gotten everything together, I'm going to walk us through the materials that you will need. Then the next thing to do afterwards will be for you to email professors or to apply directly to the school. Now, some schools will tell you to get a professor before even proceeding with the application, while others have central application. And they will tell you that it's fine for you to just apply directly to the school, but you do not need to get a professor first before your application. So we'll also talk about those two kinds of application. Then comes the part where you have to, prepare for interview, and then you await your application decision. And of course, you're welcome to the US. Voila. Okay, so let's go on to the application documents that we've been talking about all along. Number one, now this might seem like, oh, you're coming to the US. Everyone should know that they should get their passport. Well, yes, but it is just fine to mention it again. Please get your international passport ready. Start this moment. When I needed to get mine then, I think I got my passport during my service here, the NYSC National Youth Service Corps. That was when I got my passport, because I just did not want to hear any kind of story. I got that ready, and of course you would have a 5-year expiration period on your passport, so you have time. Honestly, no matter when you get it, you have enough time to still fit into your application period. So you won't need to be afraid as to whether your passport is going to expire before you eventually use it. Then you need to get your transcript ready. Now for this, I'm going to tell you about, okay, so like I already said, I had my master's here in the US as well at Auburn University. Now I finished from FUTA. And after I finished, I started, I had already made up my mind before that I wasn't going to have my graduate education, graduate school in Nigeria. So I'd already started working towards things, and I was speaking with people that knew better. And I had to, when I was going through the application requirements for different schools, there were schools that required evaluated transcripts. There were schools that were fine with just your direct transcript like that from Nigeria. You would not need to probably go through the West evaluation or anything like that. At the same time, there were program-specific requirements. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Right now at Tulane University, I got here and I was speaking with some other students who were schooling at the School of Engineering, School of Sciences, and all that. And I was surprised that transcript evaluation was not a requirement for their admission. Meanwhile, for biomedical sciences, it was a no-brainer. You had to evaluate your transcript, except your highest degree was earned here in the US. So those are some of the things you want to look into. The program you're applying to is transcript evaluation a requirement or not? If it is a requirement and a requirement that cannot be waived, are you ready to go through with it? Or do you want to bypass that, probably because of finances or something? Or do you want to bypass that and look into other schools? I would suggest that you look at both, especially if you can afford it. You could evaluate your transcript once and then have it sent to schools. Or you could look into schools that do not require transcript evaluation and just stick with those ones. But I would say that, okay, presently, biomedical sciences at Tulane University, while transcript evaluation is a requirement, application fee is waived. So you could just, for anyone trying to apply probably to a school like Tulane University, the biomedical sciences program, you could look at it like, okay, I'm going to use the money that I would have otherwise used for application to just go ahead and evaluate my transcript so that I do not eventually miss out on the application package or the admission package as a whole. So you might want to look into things like that. Then your GRE. Now, because of COVID, most schools went through this process of waiving the GRE requirements for their applicants. And a lot of schools were like, okay, people can now apply to programs without the GRE score requirements. Now, that would sound like a really good thing. If you're scared, quote and unquote, of GRE, that might be one of the schools you might want to look into schools like that. However, I will still say that it will place you on an edge, honestly. The whole process of application is like, think of yourself as being on that board, on the selection board. If you were to get application from 5 students, just imagine your own application. Imagine yourself reviewing your own application, then judge yourself. Do you think you would look at your application and be like, yes, this is it, this is what we are looking for? Or would you feel like, oh, okay, if I were to get someone better, maybe I would go for that person? So criticize yourself properly while you're preparing your materials together. Don't let yourself pass up. Don't go easy on yourself, basically. Don't go easy on yourself. Don't just prepare mediocrity and expect something really great eventually. Now, in preparing for GRE, a lot of schools for those schools that still require GRE, a lot of them would have it stated there that a score of 300 is the minimum requirement. And they would split it for you, probably 150 something for the verbal. In fact, some could even go as high as maybe 310 or something. Some could say 150 something for verbal. Some could say just like that for the quantitative. So you want to look into that. Actually, I know someone that had gone through applying to the school, getting a professor, and then after sending in the application materials, they looked at the GRE score and they said the score was too low for the intended program, and the application was denied just because of that. I was pained to the bone because he had already gone through a lot and trying to get to that stage during the application. But that's just to say that you cannot overlook any aspect of your package material. Make sure, just give it your best. Give it the best of your ability. And how do you prepare for GRE? You would have gotten the materials, the verbal parts, the parts where you have to learn the new words, the vocabulary and everything like that. Try to use them, daily usage, because it's not just about you memorizing words. It's also about you being able to apply these words, in speaking, in writing, and in context. It's more of contextual. So you want to make sure that you're able to use the words. Then you want to also go through these words every day. When I was preparing for mine, I had jotters where I would split them 10 words per day, 50 words that for 5 days. So I will have 50 words from Monday through Friday. By Saturday, I will go through all the 50 words again. By Sunday, I will go through everything again, try to figure out the ones I missed out, the ones, like that, just until everything stopped. And then I made sure that I used them daily. In fact, my siblings then, they were my practice subjects. While speaking at home, I was not even speaking quote and unquote normal English again. I was speaking GRE English because I needed it to stick. It was not in any way easy to just memorize over 300 new words and be able to use them. So it had to become a part of you. And I would suggest that, you try to do that for yourself. For the quantitative, you just have to keep on practicing as well. Practice, wake up, just make it your job for whatever period of time you're planning to practice for, before you get on to writing your exam. And I think, now I'm not very sure if this information is very, very correct, but I think there are just 2 centers in Nigeria where you can write GRE. 2 locations, Abuja and Lagos, right? I would say that please make sure you verify properly before you register. I know a friend that, I'm not very sure how he did it, but he was scammed twice. I have no idea how he fell for that twice while trying to register for GRE. So please make sure you do your findings properly. Speak with people that have done it before, that you're very sure that have done it, so that, okay, great. I can see that there is a center as well in Port Harcourt. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I always thought it was just, perfect. That's great. So my information is really limited in that regard. There is also one in the East. Interesting. Okay. Please just make sure that you are registering at a verified center. Please make sure that it's a center where you can get your score after you're done. Make sure it's a center where you're not just paying someone that will not get you your result back. Okay, so let's go on to your statement of purpose. Now, your statement of purpose I will say that I would like to call it your showcase letter. It is the letter that talks about you when you're not there. It is you telling them who you are, even in your absence. You want to make sure that your statement of purpose is captivating, it's engaging. Don't just write and throw words together. Imagine yourself, like I said earlier, imagine that someone submitted your own SOP to you. Now read it critically. What would you say? Would you be willing to consider this person for application? Or would you feel like, do we have better candidates over there? Read it again. When you're done, review it. Go back the second day, review it. Look at each paragraph. Try to connect what you have from your first paragraph to your second paragraph. Don't just write a disjointed story. You want to make sure that you can carry your reader along. You want to make sure that you can carry the board along. You want them to look at your statement of purpose and get interested in actually knowing you, in reviewing the rest of your package materials. You don't want to just submit something that will make them lose interest after probably reading the first paragraph. So please invest time into this. Take your time. Like I said, start early. Probably if you're working towards the 2023 admission, you can start right now. You have more than enough time. Then you also want to make sure that you know the application deadlines of the schools you're applying to, because no one is going to give you any extra time, honestly. So work with the application deadlines of the schools you're applying to. Most schools for fall application would be December 1st, January, and the latest would usually be around March, especially for international students. Also, when you're going through schools, remember that, I'm sorry? When you're going through schools, make sure that you have, because of course different schools will have different application deadlines, right? So one of the things I did when I was preparing for my application, when I was preparing to come into the US, like directly from Nigeria, was, like I said, I had jotters, different one for different purposes. For every school I looked up, I wrote down their deadline. I wrote down the program I was interested in. I wrote down the possible professor that I could work with. I wrote down their research interest. Each school would have their own specific requirements, and each program will have their own specific requirements as well. So I wrote down everything. Make sure you're keeping track of your progress. That way, you don't have all of your information just jumbled up in your memory. It is easy to go back and look at what you have. The same thing goes with your CV, your SOP and your CV. I could say that they are kind of the same. You want to make sure that your CV also speaks about you. Some of the information you will have in your SOP should not be on your CV. You want your CV to be concise, yet with really, really meaningful information. You cannot be humble enough on your CV. If you have awards, include them on your CV. If you've probably had specific events or something, include them on your CV. Of course, events that are of importance or that have a sort of relation to the program you're applying to. I would not expect to probably look at your CV and see that you went on a church crusade some time ago and you converted and you had probably like 20,000 converts. You understand? So that would not be on your CV. Or probably you led someone to Christ or something like that. That would not be on your CV, of course. So you want your CV to be career focused, to be career targeted. Now that we've talked about the application documents and all that you need to get ready for your application, we're going to go into, no, please remain on the previous page. We're going to go into program and department selection. This is very, very important. Now, as Nigerians or as a typical Nigerian, I want to be, or probably as a typical African, we tend to be really, really hinged on the name of, the department. For example, you're studying biology, for example, you're studying microbiology, for example, is chemical engineering or something. Now, I'm going to make myself an example in this case, just to relay what I'm trying to pass across. I studied biology in FUTA, and biology in FUTA was kind of all-encompassing. We looked at parasitology, entomology, public health, botany, basically almost all aspects of living. But I have always been interested in health. And I knew that whatever it is I was going to do had to be health related. So when I started my application, at first, I was applying to schools of public health. And that was a very, very big mistake, because application to School of Public Health most times you would need to probably go through MPH, which is the Master of Public Health, and it was more like a professional program. You had to apply to School of Public Health. It was not exactly a general thing. So it was after going around and round and round in circles, getting rejections, it was like my application was not enough. My background, was not enough to go to the School of Public Health. Then I was like, okay, at least it has to do with health, right? So I started looking into the research interest of the labs I had interest in. I eventually did antibiotic resistance for my master's. See, before I left Nigeria, I didn't even know there was anything like antibiotic resistance. It was the last thing I would have thought of. But all I saw was, okay, this is biomedical sciences. And to think that it was even at the College of Veterinary Medicine. Meanwhile, I've always loved human medicine. But then by the time I eventually got into the program, I saw that the drugs that I worked with were even drugs that were of human importance. Of course, some were of animal importance, but they were also of human importance. So please don't get hinged on the name of the program. Don't get hinged on the name of the department during your, that is a very big mistake that anyone could make. Presently, I'm still at the Department of Biomedical Sciences, but specifically, I'm working on microbiology and immunology. Now, in the same biomedical sciences, we have those that are doing cancer research. We have those that are like me, that are in microbiology and immunology. We have others that are in different other programs in the same biomedical sciences. But by the time I graduate, I'm just going to have biomedical sciences on my certificate. So you cannot just get hinged on, oh, this is what the program is called. I'm interested in microbiology, so I'm just looking for microbiology up and down. You can actually, it is the research that counts. It is the research you're doing in the lab that really, really counts. So please have an open mind when you're looking into programs to apply to, when you're looking into labs to join, have an open mind. Most likely, as a typical Nigerian or as a typical African, most of the research might not be research topics that you're very, very familiar with. But just know that when you get here, you will understand better, you will know better. So don't just get hinged on what you know. And lastly, I'll be talking on emailing professors or direct application to schools. Now, one of the things you could do during your application is to email professors to know if they are willing to take you into their labs, and then, that would help during your application, because there are schools that would specifically state it that you have to have a professor first, a professor who's willing to take you into his or her lab first before they can even consider your application and before they can offer you admission, because that professor will be the one sponsoring you, that professor will be the one paying, that professor will be the one covering your stipend. And there are also schools that would tell you to apply directly to the school. Now, these are schools that offer central application, and I experienced both. For my master's, I had to get a professor first, while for my PhD, I just applied directly to the school, because the school, you will have to go through lab rotations, and the school will be in charge of paying your stipend for the first year. So to do that, again, like I mentioned earlier, and I'm saying again, understand that different schools have different requirements, different programs have different requirements. So look into it. Do I need to email professors first? And if you need to email professors, what should the content of your email be? A short introduction of yourself, attach your CV to the email, attach your GRE score to the email. Just give a very, very brief detail of what you did, the previous research experience you've had, and how your research aligns with his. So then you can also check with him. Now, most times, most of these professors are very, very busy, and you might not get an immediate response from them. Just wait for about a week after you've sent the email. If you do not get a response, then you can send you can check in with the professor again, just a reminder to check in with him. If you do not get a response, then move on to the next person. If you're going to schools that require direct application, then all you have, that's very strict, except for the application fee. All you have to do is to just apply directly to the school. I think in your SOP, you could just mention about 3 professors that you could work with, you could possibly work with. And afterwards, the department will get back to you, and they will schedule application interview dates with you and all that. Okay, so finally, that's all I have. And if you have questions, I believe we're going to have a session where we'll have questions. So I don't think I'll be taking questions right now, but if you have questions, please pen them down and I'll get back to them during the question and answer session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. I really enjoyed it. All right, so I think I'm gonna just switch gears to Opeoluwa now. You're already sharing your screen. That was. You don't want me to introduce you. All right. No, I think you're muted. You may want to unmute yourself.
No, I say you can go ahead.
All right, so yeah, let me just go ahead and introduce my good friend. Yeah, I think I actually met you on was it on Twitter? Yeah, that we started doing stuff together, and it has been a wonderful interaction and friendship so far. Thank you so much, Opeoluwa. All right, so Opeoluwa Adewale is a PhD student at Johns Hopkins University, and is passionate about community and nation building through youth empowerment. He believes that the youth is the strength of every society. And training them on how to reach the top of their chosen career path. So, Opeoluwa, please, you can take it away now.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for the kind introduction. And I would like to thank the speaker that spoke before me for doing a great job by laying a solid foundation. In fact, I learned a lot of things. If I were to reapply, thank God I'm not, but if I were, I definitely would want to have her talk recorded so I can listen to it multiple times. Let me just ask, can you hear me loud and clear, or can you hear some background noise? Because I'm currently at a conference, so I sense there might be some background noise. Just let me know. So can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, we can hear you, even though we can hear some background as well. I think it's still manageable.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still
okay.
manageable.
I really apologize for that. I really apologize for that. All right, so let's go straight to our presentation. So today I'll be talking about how you can ace your interview. I've had the privilege of helping multiple students with mock interviews from different parts of the world. It's interesting to see how much of a success rate we have had as a result of this. So this is going to be a short presentation because I think Folasade has done a great job by really going deep into the whole application process. I think that is actually probably more important than this, because this is dependent on you getting an offer. But I'm certain that all of you here would have multiple offers by God's grace. All right, so how do you ace your interview? Now, this is my table of contents. So I will start by introducing what an interview is, the essence of an interview. Why are interviews important? It's important for you to know why interviews are important, so you can then know how to prepare appropriately. Interview. Then the second thing is, so I divided this into 3 phases, which is before the interview, how do you prepare? Then during the interview, how are you meant to act? And lastly, after the interview, what do you do? It might surprise you to know that there are important things for you to do at those different stages. And I'll also give an example for myself. I made a costly mistake after the interview that prevented me from getting into one of the best schools in the world. However, I am still grateful for where God has brought me to. The school I am is awesome, and I am happy where I am. All right, so first of all, the introduction. But before going straight to defining what an interview, the essence of an interview, I want to reiterate and piggyback off of what Folasade said, which is to understand where the interview process comes in. So first is that, let me just give you an overview of the general application process. So the first thing, you research on desired programs, like Folasade has said rightfully, check Google, you make sure you're on LinkedIn, make sure you're on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, ensure that, very important that you follow the likes of Dr. Shinwa Ajayi, for example, Dr. Lumuyiwa, Dr. Samuel, and there are so many other people too that you should follow on Twitter. Then if you're on LinkedIn, there are a couple of others as well that also post multiple programs and opportunities. So if you're 2 social media platforms, you need to find a program. First is LinkedIn. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account, I will strongly encourage you to get one today. Secondly, Twitter. So when you join those platforms, if you're already on them, great. Ensure that you follow those key individuals. And there are some other pages that are dedicated to just posting and reposting scholarship opportunities and generally PhD opportunities. Then the second thing is you have to ensure that you learn how to write your statement of purpose. That's what the SOP means, and your CV. There is a right way to write your CV. There's also a right way to write your SOP. There is a structure. And likewise, when you follow these individuals, you get to know more about that. And so, and I think Dr. Lumiwa has a website with templates. I'm also going to be providing some templates too. And I can send you a link and compile all those templates of examples of SOPs for different fields. So it can help you then have to focus on the pattern of an SOP and just maintain that pattern or structure. That's how you get a good SOP. So after getting all that settled, the next thing is that you study for your GRE. Then you choose a recommender, and then you take the necessary exams. You write your SOP, you work on your CV, make it pretty, make it really nice, really top notch. Then you submit your documents, and then you wait. This is usually the very difficult time because a lot of people are impatient about it and anxious as well. And then, luckily for you, you get shortlisted. But the interesting thing is that for a PhD, unlike for a master's, you don't necessarily have to go to have an interview unless you are going to be funded. So what really makes interviews important for PhD applications is the fact that you are going to be funded most for a PhD. So they want to be sure giving the money to the right person, to the right candidate. Or for a master, because you are coming with your funding, so you don't necessarily need to have an interview unless you have a grant assistantship or there's a scholarship like the MasterCard Foundation scholarship or something like that can be attached to a certain program. Then you have to have an interview. All right, so this is where the interview. So it comes much later after you have been successful with everything, and you get that very exciting email. Congratulations, you have been invited to interview with blah 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 program at Harvard University. Then the next thing is that I want to go to is just to explain why an interview is important. So the interview is an opportunity to show the committee who you are, what your interests are, and why their program is the right place for you to explore. So what do I mean? So you have submitted your CV, you have read your CV, checked your CV, awesome. They have checked your SOP, awesome. But for them, it's not sufficient for them to really know who you are. Not just what you have accomplished, but who you are as a person. What is your personality? What do you bring to the table? Hearing it from the horse's mouth. Because it's very simple. I mean, an Android, a robot or an AI system could have as well created, synthesized an SOP from out of the blues and then a CV as well and submitted. But to ensure you're not an imposter, they want to see you face to face. They want to see you and they want to then have a conversation with you. Interview. So first thing is that is for them to get to know who you are. So you need to be authentic. Then what your interests are. So you have to understand the motivation behind pursuing your PhD in that particular field. And then lastly, why you're interested in that program. Those are the key important factors that detects the essence of an interview. So how do we go about it? How do we get to that stage of an interview? Now, let me tell you, there are 3 different ways, and I have them on this side. The first is that a cold email. Let me just ask, at this point, can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay, beautiful. All right, thank you. So the first thing is a cold email. Now, so it's interesting for me to say at this point that majority of the offers I have seen, particularly for masters with funding, has been through cold emails. And I think it's also the same with PhD, especially PhDs that doesn't require you to apply to a program. If you send a cold email for a PhD that requires you to apply to a program, what you get will be, sorry, we don't have the liberty to choose students. Students are selected by the department. But you might still have an interview, but the purpose of that interview is different. So based on the different routes, there are different purposes for different interviews based on the routes. So for one which has cold email, you can either be having the interview because the professor has reviewed your CV and your SOP, and he wants to interview you for the position at that point. So in that situation, he most likely will ask you to give him a presentation of your work. But if you're not told to prepare a presentation for your work, and then it's just a code, so doesn't really show any interest or whatever, but still nevertheless wants to meet with you, it's probably for him a relationship with you for something possible in the future, either by you applying to the program and him reviewing your application out of the pool of applicants, and then helping to facilitate the selection of you to be shortlisted for the interview. So there are two major reasons. Then the other routes, for these routes, different routes, the second route is through applying to a PhD program. When you apply to, let's say, Biomedical Sciences program, Molecular Microbiology program, and then the program selects you. So when they select you, then you get shortlisted for an interview. And then there are two kinds of interviews that you are given. You're either given a panel interview where you have people, probably the HOD of the department and other important members of the department, and most likely those who are within the same field as yours or similar research interests, and then they'll begin to ask you questions. So that's an entirely different ballgame. That's a different ballgame entirely. And the second one is a one-on-one interview. So a one-on-one interview usually involves you meeting somebody you have indicated interest in. So when you're writing your SOP, you are advised to mention at least 3 people. Some schools can say 5, 3 people that you want to. So from those 3 people, select people to enter that pool. Then in addition, some schools will tell you to increase that. So when you are to have the interview, they will tell you to send a list of 6 people or 10 people. The school asked me to send 10 people that I would like. And so based on that, based on the availability, time availability of the different professors, then you giving their selection of professors that will interview one-on-one. So that's kind of one-on-one interview is an entirely different kind of interview. I can't go to the specifics for now, but I don't want to focus on the general overview of that. Then the last one is a PhD scholarship interview. Now, there are certain PhD programs, especially in the UK. So in the US, for life sciences programs, you automatically get funding. The department has funding. So they have this grant that they apply to, and then you also get funding. So a professor might have a grant, and from that grant, he can fund 2 PhD students, 1 PhD and 1 master student. So that's different. Most schools in the UK and some other schools outside the US in particular, and I think it's also similar for Canada, but Canada is more based on the grant owned by a professor. So, but for those other schools where you need a scholarship, especially in the UK, then you have an interview for a scholarship interview. For example, Cambridge. So when you apply to Cambridge, I had the opportunity to be interviewed for a scholarship. It's called the medical training program scholarship or something like that, doctorate program training program scholarship. So for that interview, I had a panel of professors asking me questions on my research from different sides. It was focused on my knowledge, not necessarily my personality. I wanted to know what I knew, if I was good enough to be considered for the scholarship, if I had the knowledge enough if I had enough knowledge to successfully complete a PhD at Cambridge University. So that is different from the admission process. It's for the scholarship. So after you have been shortlisted and you have been granted the scholarship, then you then have to apply for the admission to the school. So when I got interviewed by Cambridge, I was fortunate by God's grace that I got the scholarship. But when I realized that I was in the US at that point, I would still have to apply to the school for admission and then go to Nigeria, apply for UK visa. And this was all during the pandemic. So I told myself, it's better to stay in the US. And I'm glad I did. So those are the different routes and different types of structures of interviews that you can encounter. So having said that, let's go to now what you do before the PhD interview. Now, before the interview, the first thing you do is that you ensure that you have a strong understanding of your research. Because one important part of the interview is to get to know what you know, to know if you as a candidate have an understanding of the work you have done so far. So therefore, ensure that whatever you put in your CV or your SOP is something you can explain, you understand, you can explain using scientific terms. So you focus on if you have submitted the research proposal, understand the research you have explained, understand your suggestions, understand the have an idea of how you would design an experiment. Because they can ask you a question: what if you encountered so and so problem, how would you troubleshoot? Those are some questions you can encounter. So if if you don't have a good understanding of your research proposal or your statement of purpose, what you did, the research you explained that you did in your statement of purpose, it might not be a good experience for you. Second one is, so be prepared to talk about your research interest. That is, if you are proposing an idea, if you are, like your proposal, for example, you need to be able to explain in details. Explain why you are using this technique. For example, if you are trying to use CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing to do something fancy, you need to be able to explain why you're using that particular technique and those kind of things. So it all boils down to having a strong understanding of your research. The second is that think about your motivation for pursuing a PhD. The question that they most likely will ask you is that, why are you applying for a PhD? Second one you most likely will get is, why are you applying to this program or this school for a PhD? Obviously, you shouldn't say something like, oh, because I want to japa, I'm tired of Nigeria, I want to leave this country. You'll get an immediate rejection. So what you want to say is that you want to have an understanding of your story, your motivation, show some passion, show some interest in the program, show some to use the knowledge gained to impact society. That's the kind of response you should give. Then another thing that most students don't do is that most students only focus on their research and don't understand that the supervisor, the interview is not just a one direction thing. It's not just a professor asking you a question and you responding. It's meant to be a beautiful interview is when there is a conversation, there is a rapport between the interviewer and interviewer. It's important for you to understand the supervisor's work. So when you're in a list of people who will be interviewing you, do your research and get their papers, read their papers, understand what they are doing, check them on Twitter, because many labs have accounts on Twitter. So you check them on Twitter and you have an idea of the direction of their lab, some of the things to think and what have you. And then that provides a basis for an interesting conversation. So, for example, if a professor has suggested something, read up on that thing, and then make that to be the focus of the conversation, because he will be interested in it. And then you are telling him indirectly that I am the student you are looking for. I am the student you see, the PhD student you see in the future. Then the next thing is that know the literature of your field so you can have a conversation with your professor. And then it's very important that you have mock interviews. So you can either who are working in that lab and tell them I'm going to be supervised by this professor. Would you like to help practice with me on LinkedIn? And they will gladly do. Many people are super nice. Or you can meet people who are mentors to help you with a mock interview, or your colleagues as well. And then, like Folasade Adekanmbi was saying, which was beautiful, which is that she had to create several jotters where she wrote while preparing for a GRE. Likewise, for interview, you don't need to get a physical jotter, but prepare a document, Word document, where you have questions, hypothetical PhD interview questions, and then write your responses and try to internalize them, not necessarily cram it verbatim, but for you to have an understanding of what if you were to face a similar question. That helps the interview to really go smoothly. Now, during the interview, what do you do? Now, this is it. So when it's time for the interview and you are at the point of having this interview with the professor, there are a couple of things you have to consider. One is that you need to ensure that you do your interview where you have strong internet connection. Now, I want to apologize because I'm sure probably my internet has been misbehaving at some point during this meeting. So I want to apologize for that. But it's very important, particularly for those of us coming from a third world where that is not widespread and it's also not that strong. So it's very important that you have to make some sacrifices and be proactive. If you know you have to have an interview, invest by getting sufficient data. If it means you have a friend or an uncle that has strong internet, go and do that. Because the people who will be interviewing you will be in the first world. They don't care to hear all those excuses that, oh, sorry, the gen must. They don't understand those kind of things. So in order not to portray a wrong image of yourself or negative image of yourself, you need to ensure that you take note of these peculiarities that we face, depending on what's applying from Africa. Internet connection, as well as a quiet office, a quiet space. So you can see, for example, you're probably struggling to hear me because of the background. This is something you want to avoid. It reminds me of this. Let me cite an example of a student. I was helping a student who got an offer to be interviewed by Oxford University, the immunology program at Oxford University. And he had the plan to leave his job, but he didn't want to tell his supervisor. And unfortunately for him, his supervisor needed his attention for an important and urgent work on the day of the interview. So what did that imply? It implied that he was on the road in transit when it was time for the interview with Oxford University. And so when I heard this story, it was so obvious. It was a no-brainer that the reason why he got rejected was because he was poorly prepared. So imagine Oxford University professors are sitting down to interview you. They don't need you, you need them. And you are having an interview in a car and talking with them, and they can't even hear you. There's so much noise and everything. He was just rejected. And if I even appreciate the professors for even sitting down and asking him questions, because if we were a Nigerian professor, they probably would have said, no, you are not meant to be here, and that's all. So it's very important you take note of that. Then, so if you have roommates, which I think many of us when applying, you probably will be in that situation, or family members, important you let people know that they should not disturb you when you have the interview. You don't want to see where your mom is calling your name and asking you to come and have food, or your siblings are disturbing you, those kind of things. Or if you are married and you have kids, you want to let your significant other, your wife or your husband, know that please take the kids away at this time because I need to focus on this interview. I have this interview for an hour. So it's very important you take note of that. Then another important thing is that you take note of the environment. I talked about the noise, the sound, but also the video, because they have to see you. Now, one thing you notice from this Zoom meeting is that is another issue, which is that you see, when you look at the video of my video, for example, you see that I'm backing the light, and the light is coming from on top. So it makes it very difficult for you to see me properly. The best posture to have when having a video meeting or an interview is when the light is facing you. One of the things I did in this case is that I have a lamp that I put here attached to my laptop, which helps you to at least see my face when I come closer. So when you are having an interview, invest. If you can't use natural light, if the natural light is not sufficient, because Nigeria, there's so many that will affect that. Get a lamp, go to a market, get a lamp, and put the light directly at you. So you have to create the venue for your interview. It's as important as that, creating that space. Create it a day before so that you are well prepared for it. Then the next thing is that, so about this area, tidy. Now it's very important, tidy. Your background is important. So you see my background, for example, is a plain background. This is the best background. Ideally, you want to avoid having a door because people can go in and go out. I don't want people to see things they're not meant to see. They're not meant to see. So you try to use a neutral background. You can try to use a background with books, or you can blur your background, which is what I have done. And you saw Folasade did that as well. The next thing is that, so I said natural light. Then the other thing I want to mention is that you have to ensure that when you have a video interview, your picture, your torso is centered on the screen, on your screen, your video screen. And also that to ensure that one of the things you try to do is that you try to elevate your camera, the camera of your laptop. How do you do that? You can put it on top of a pile of books. In my case, what I did is that I put it on a pile of chairs. If I were to bring down the chairs, what you probably will be seeing will be something like this. And you can say this is not the best way to have a video meeting or an interview, because most interviews for international students will be done online. So it's going to be on a platform like this. So the next thing, and let me also add to that, which is that you want to try to ensure that you have eye contact with your interviewers. So one of the ways you have eye contact is by when you are answering questions, when you're being asked questions, when you're answering questions, you try to look into the camera rather than just looking at the screen, the video of the person. You try to look straight into the camera. By looking into the camera, you are having eye contact. And by doing that, it sort of like creates a connection with the interviewer. So you want to create that in connection. Once you can get to a point of a smooth conversation, that is the quality of a good and soft. When the interviewer is laughing, you are laughing, everyone is just free. They are authentic, they are being themselves. That is what you desire to have. So then the next thing I also want to say is that, so when you're to have an interview, it's very important you ensure that your interviewers don't enter the interview room before you, unless you are told to be in a waiting room. Whether there's a waiting room or you are to join immediately, ensure that you have joined at least, I would say 10 minutes ideally, but if you can, that is fine as well. Because you don't also want to join so early before, such that your interviewer is caught off guard. Because if there isn't a waiting room and your interviewer is busy dealing with some food and eating it voraciously, and you are already there, they will feel uncomfortable. I don't want to create that kind of weird atmosphere. The next thing is that be yourself. But there is a caveat. Be yourself, but be yourself with wisdom. Be yourself doesn't mean that loose and start using Nigerian colloquial slangs like Asha, I've been now, yes, so to somebody who is from Italy, who doesn't understand, who's trying to speak English and doesn't understand what you're saying, you create a weird situation. So, and don't also give weird remarks. If you are being interviewed by a professor, a woman, you'll be like, oh, you look so beautiful. You just be careful because some cultures don't allow that. They call it harassment. So take note of that. Be yourself, but with wisdom. One of the things that you need to include in being yourself, being respectful, and always ensuring you put on a smile. Don't make it awkward where you just smile unnecessarily and people are wondering, is this person crazy? What's happening? But smile and talk and be kind, be affable. Because people abroad, when they ask you questions, they want to see your emotion. So if your face is just like this, oh, I work on malaria, my sister and so is this. Your face is a contradiction to the passion you're trying to portray from your tone. You hope you are portraying from your tone. You understand? So you try to ensure that what is on your facial expression matches with your tone and your gestures as well. That is how people communicate abroad. So it's important to take note of that. Then a good posture. So you want to ensure, like I explained, you don't want to be leaning towards the front, which is what I have to do because I want you to see my face clearly. But you want to have a good posture. And these are things you have to consider. Now, these are some examples. Now, what do we notice here? This is what we should not have for a video interview. This situation where they can't even see your face. You are backing the lights, hence you can't see your face. So what do you think this guy could have done if this was what he was left to do? Like, for example, I'm left with just having the light on top. I can't change that because I'm at a conference. But one thing that I've done is that, you see, I've brought in a light. It's not a natural light, but it's an artificial light. So that's one of the things you can do with this kind of situation. Or try to find a way, which I think he did, is that he tried to face the light or try to use a very strong artificial light source. Another example, what do we see here? So similar to this, in her situation, she hasn't changed her background, but she has used some artificial lights to brighten her face. And it's, therefore the interviewer is able to see your facial expression and it makes communication more effective. But I can also say something here, which was not corrected here, which is that our background is somewhat distracting. If I were to be in that situation, I would have pulled down the mirror, as well as I would have put down every other thing to make it a plain background. Now, what do you do after the interview? Now, many a time, students, after the great interview, they expect that the interviewer will be dreaming about them. Be like, oh, wow, I love this. I love the conversation so much. I love the students so much. Thinking about the student 24 hours. See, the reality is that the interviewer has a lot of things on his or her mind. He probably doesn't even have time to be thinking about you for more than just an hour every week. So it's very important for us to take certain measures even after the interview and not just rest on our hours, saying that, oh, the interview went well, so I am certain I'll get the offer. There are some things you can do to increase your chances and to get the offer. And there are also things that if you are not careful, when you overdo them, it sort of decreases your chances. It makes you to be a little bit, you can irritate the interviewers or those evaluating your application. So what are those things? Follow up, follow up, follow up. Very important. It's very important for you to learn, to understand that following up after your interview is as important as the interview itself. It's part of the interview process itself. Why? Because when you follow up, you indicate interest, you indicate strong interest, you indicate strong passion. You let them know that you have them in mind, that they are not an afterthought. The school you to school, this is your dream school. So that's what, when you follow up, that's what it means. How do you follow up? You send a thank you email. Very important. You don't have, I will give you an example of a thank you email. You don't have to put, the story of your life, that God will bless you from the bottom of my life in the name of Jesus, and Lord will bless you. You put scripture. You need to be careful. A simple, concise thank you email suffices. So a thank you email is very important. And there's a way you have to do it in a professional manner. And I'll provide an example for you. Then you thank them for their time and consideration, and then you try to emphasize your interest. I will show you from the example. And then you appreciate people who helped you. Very important, especially those who are part of the organization you're applying to, because they might be in a situation where they'll be asked to give an opinion about you. And if you eventually get into that school, you don't want to have already created enemies for yourself. So it's important you thank them, even if you haven't seen the result. Let them know that, the interview went well. Thank you so much for your help. It was very helpful. Blah 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 blah. That's how you follow up correctly. So next is that. So when you follow up and you don't get a response, what do you do? Now you want to try to avoid sending 2 follow-up emails. But one thing I would say is that the first email that you have to send, try to send it. If you were not given a timeline, send it at least 1 week after the last communication, after your interview, 1 week after your interview, that's a follow-up email, but that's not the same as the thank you email. The thank you email is immediately. So immediately after sending the thank you email, then 1 week after, you can ask them, okay, if they didn't give you a timeline, but if they had told you that, okay, you'll get to know more, we'll contact you in 2 weeks, wait till the 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, the next day you can say, I just want to find out blah, 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 about the situation. This is that. I look forward to hearing back from you. Finish. So like I said, try not to follow up twice. All right, so this is an example. So look at this example of a thank you follow-up email just immediately after you can send it immediately after, or you can send it the next day, but don't wait too long so it doesn't get lost, because you want to send it when you are still fresh in their minds. So they're not like, who is this person? I don't even know who this person is, and then just send it to spam or something, or to junk. So this is an example. So you have, dear Cassandra, thank you for speaking with me yesterday about the sales position at your company. It was a pleasure getting to know more about your others, solve their business problems, as I am very passionate about this as well. So what you see here, the person is trying to reemphasize their interest in the position as they're also thanking the person. And it's as professional as possible. Then it's in addition, you have having the chance and opportunity to work with a company that supports this mission is very exciting. I believe my combined background in business development and management makes this role a great mutual fit. So I look forward to any potential next steps. So this is something, so you are re-emphasizing not just your interest, but you are re-emphasizing your qualification for that role. So when you put all that into an email, that is a solid thank you email that you can send immediately after. All right, go of time, let's move forward. So in conclusion, I've explained to you about the entire process, and I'm starting that by using this, by applying the different tips that I've provided, you definitely will stand a great chance of getting into a PhD program after your interview. Now, what usually happens is that they usually send out invites to a larger pool of people than those who are accepted. But the good news is that unlike the general application, which usually involves, let's say you have 100 people, you most likely invitations will be given to just about, let's say, 20 of those who applied. Now, out of the 20, they probably will be accepting just half of them. So that's usually how the proportion is like. So you have a great chance when you get to the interview stage, and if you apply to like 10 schools, the probably is the possibility of you getting into at least 100% probability of getting into at least 3 of those schools. If you were invited for an interview to 10. So what I want to conclude with this, which is just to encourage you. This is a proverb that has really impacted me. And I don't use it to encourage you because I know that this process can appear daunting to many of you, and some of you have no idea. But I want to let you know that if you choose to do the difficult today, then tomorrow you can accomplish and you shall accomplish the impossible. So I encourage you to embrace difficulty. It's a lot. Looking at the situation, the Naira is being devalued. You want to apply for your GRE and write your GRE, IELTS and those kind of things, but embrace this difficulty. And then tomorrow, is like a few months from now, you shall have testimonies and then you shall go ahead to accomplish the impossible. So thank you very much, everyone, for this thing. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and let's see how I can help you and serve you more. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you so much, Opeoluwa. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I would like to appreciate the two guests, Folasade Adekanmbi and Opeoluwa Fashoro, for the wonderful presentations they just gave today. And at this point, if you have any questions, so we're going to do it this way. If you want to have the mic and just speak directly to ask your question, you can do that. And you can also have the option of typing your question through the chat box. So anyone works. So we're going to do that for the next couple of minutes. And please, let's have the questions coming in at this point. Yeah. I think you can stop sharing at this point.
Yeah,
thank you.
So, sir, I would have to leave right now because I have to do something. But I'm going to leave my LinkedIn, my LinkedIn accounts, so I can connect with the students. And then if they have further questions that they might want to direct to me, specific questions, I can always answer them on LinkedIn.
I'd like to ask a question before you.
All right.
Okay. Okay. If you can ask me the question right now, then I can answer it.
Okay.
So yeah.
So I sent code, and I had the response from one of them saying he likes my profile and would like to have an interview. So we did have the interview, and then it went quite well because he said he was interested in he liked my experience and all of that we can work together. But he don't have funding at the time. And he said I should go ahead to apply to the school. I was going to recommend, to the admission board that they have teaching assistantships. Yeah. Okay. So my question here is this now. I did not send because said I should reach out to him after. By the one I've sent him my application, I should reach out to him to let him know that my application has been completed. So since then, this was earlier, like late June. That's when we had the meetings. So I've not reached out to him since then because I'm here to complete my application. My application, sending all my application documents. So I'm thinking, do I still need to reach out to him before I'm able to finalize my application, or should still?
Okay, what did it tell you to do? Sorry, you might have said it, but I didn't hear. What did it tell you to do? So what you are saying is that a professor indicated interest in you, and then you had a meeting with him. Now, let me ask you: did you present anything? Did you give a presentation of your research to him?
No.
What was the discussion of the? I'm listening.
Okay, so there wasn't a presentation, but he asked me to talk about my background, my interest, what I've worked on, as it relates to what he does. So I gave him a lowdown.
Am I the one who can't hear
you?
Me? Or...
Can you hear me?
We can't really hear you very well. Yeah, we can hear you very well. Can you
hear me now?
So you know what you're gonna, because of our time, what we're gonna do is that send your questions directly to you can reach out to him through LinkedIn so that you can just because we have a lot of
my link here.
Actually answered today, so I don't want us to waste time with.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Opeoluwa.
Thank you so much, bro.
Yeah.
So you did a very, very good job, Opeoluwa.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Folasade. Thank you.
All right, so if you have any questions, so I'm just gonna say this, please, if you're coming to ask a question using your voice, please, you don't have to time cost for this program. Because a lot of time people waste time on those kind of introductions. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please, you don't have to do that. Just go directly to your question so that we can save enough time. Yeah. Well, I think I have a question here. So I have a 4-page CV. What is the ideal number of the page my CV should be for my application? Shadi, do you have an opinion about this?
I would say that this is you applying to a PhD program. It's assumed that you're straight out of probably a master's or an undergrad. A page or two should be fine. Try to compress and have the most important, and try to be very, very short, precise, and concise. You don't need to give a full-length explanation while giving your job description or like things like that. Just try to be very, very short and precise. 2 pages should be fine.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah. Any other question? Any other question? And if you want to ask using your voice, please just indicate. Are there no questions? All right, Augustine, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Good day. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, we can hear you. Augustine, please go ahead.
Okay. Good day. My question is about the cold email, writing a cold email. I've heard some people say putting an attachment in the first conversation is not very advisable because some people would think it's maybe a spam and it might be scared of opening. I don't know if it's advisable for us to put an attachment or maybe just start a first engagement before we include an attachment in the later correspondence.
Shari, do you want to take the question?
Yes, and I have something to say about that. So for your very first email, for example, if it was a situation where you had to reach out to a professor to know if you could join their lab or something, it would be important for you to attach your CV, your GRE score, and all that, right? Now, what you can do is this. After you've attached that, make sure you mention it in your email that I have attached my CV, my GRE score, and whatever it is that you've also attached, so that they know, after reading your email, they know that you have an attachment that is legit. And they know it's not just spam. But I would say that, yes, you should. And you also want your first email to be engaging enough, to be captivating enough, because these professors don't really have enough time to sift through a lot of things. They want to know what they are dealing with and if it's worth their time or not. So you want to make them know that you are worth their time and their attention.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. There are no rules. So there's no one size fits all in all this. So it depends on personality. While I was sending an email to my current advisor, I did the same thing that Shadi mentioned. I attached my CV and also my transcript score. Transcript and also my GRE score. So if you can do that, go ahead and do that and make it quite presentable. Make it in the PDF format. I always tell people, for some of those documents like that, making the PDF document instead of attaching the Word document. That makes it quite organized. And at the same time, especially with CV, sometimes if the Microsoft Word version that the person is using is not compatible, it's just going to scatter everything. And the person might think that you are not a serious person. So always keep those things in PDF format. So no matter the kind of version you use, you still maintain its formatting and paragraph in there. All right, Shola, Kola, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, hello, good evening. Please.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to ask that there are some cases whereby you are more like a master's student, but you are not in your home country. For example, your home country is Nigeria, you're not in your home country, in another country, more like Ghana or something of such, and you're doing your master's there. And I realize that you can actually apply for visa while in that another country to more like Canada or US. So how do you create some kind of connection back home? Because I realize that it's very important to create some kind of connection that you are not running away to the country that you're going to. And for a fresh graduate that just left his or her country to another country for masters, and from that country now to US or Canada, how do you create a connection back home that you are coming back and you're a fresh graduate, you don't have any job back home in Nigeria, you don't have any wife or something of such. So how do you convince them that you are coming back to your home country and not just to go there for going sake?
That's a very good question. Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, I don't know. Shade, do you have any opinion before I share my?
Please go ahead.
All right, so I think one of the things you can do is, I always tell people, if you have a very, if you have a full funding, it works very well. And so you can actually convince them based on how you describe your long-term career plans. So the view is still gonna kind of like ask you some of those questions. So there's nothing you can do. It's your reality. You're single, you're unemployed. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change that. And you're currently in Ghana, and you can give reasons why you're actually having your visa in Ghana, And so the viewer might ask a particular question regarding what are your plans. So one of the things you can do is don't base your plans on the country you're going to. Make sure you're tying back your plans, to your own country. So for example, you can give a very good description of, oh, this is what I'm planning to do after I'm done with my PhD program. My plan is to go back to my country, to start doing this and that, to work with this organization, to start volunteering in my community. So that way, I think that is the easy way out you can actually describe that, because with that kind of situation, there's nothing you can actually do than to just, tie your long-term career plans back to your own country. Do you have any other addition to that?
No, I
Oh.
think you did a good job answering that. We have some questions in the chat.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. I said, is it possible to get full PhD fund without any publication? Yeah, the straight answer is yes. Yeah, the straight answer is yes. But you have to make every other application package very strong. Yeah, while I was applying, I didn't have any paper while I was applying for my own PhD program. So your CGPA must be on point. Your research experience must be on point. Your SOP, every of the application packets that, Shadi mentioned, these are the kind of things that you must prepare very well, Publication is not a strong requirement, except when you're talking about some general scholarships. But if you're applying to the United States, for most programs, they don't care about whether you have publication or not. All right, someone is asking, when is 2 and 3 master's intake application starting, please? Google is your friend. But actually, so the first round of application will start, I think, November 15, majorly. November 15, December 4th, December 15, January 1st, January 15, that week, February 1st. Yeah, then that, just like what Shade said, for international students, March is most times the deadline. So it depends on schools generally. So check the school that you're interested in and look at their deadline. So it's a personal work that you have to do yourself. Please, I want to know whether you are the one to select your preferred majors within the biomedical science program. Just with regards to your field, which is in hand, do you choose it or your All right, Shade, you want to answer this one?
Yes. So for this particular one, I will answer with both experiences that I have had. For my master's, I had to select a professor first, and that was my assigned department. The professor whose lab I joined was my PI all through, my principal investigator all through my program, all through my master's program. And that inherently determined the department I joined. Now for my PhD program, I applied to the Biomedical Sciences, right? But here, the application process is different. So what this program is like is during your first year, you get to rotate with different professors. So generally in the first year, we're all biomedical sciences students. There is no assignment yet. You've not joined the lab, you've not done anything yet. They want you to rotate with different professors. And by rotation, I mean that you go to a professor's lab, you work with that professor for like 6 weeks, you learn what they do in the lab, you know if you like the lab, if you like the research they have going on. They would usually advise you to check different departments. You understand, for example, you could go to rotate in a lab where they are focused on microbiology and immunology. You could go to another one where they are focused on cancer research. You could go to another one where they are focused on molecular biology. And then at the end of your rotations, you would inform the department. You would have made the choice, and then you would inform the department after you've agreed with the professor that this is the lab you want to join. So in that case, it's not as though anyone imposed on you. Do you get? Now, in my own case, I always loved microbiology and immunology. I'm not really big on cancer research. So my rotations were more streamlined towards that. But then I still chose the professor that I wanted to work with, and the professor also agreed to work with me. So the department would not exactly say, oh, we're just throwing you into cancer research. That is where you're going to stay in, or something like that. It is all dependent on your research interest, and if your research aligns with a professor that has funding, then you're good to go. I hope I was able to answer that.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, that was nice. Thank you. All right, so we have another question. Is it advisable to add all your publication in your CV? Yeah, at this point, I mean, if you don't have more than 50. So yeah, just like what Shadi was saying about, keeping your CV quite concise. I mean, if every of the publication you're gonna add is not gonna extend the page number, then add everything. But if you feel like, based on the number of publications you have, maybe you have a lot at this point, and most of them are not relevant to the application you're making. So just choose the ones that are most relevant to the program you're applying to. Adekunle, please talk to me in person. This your question. Let's talk about things that require maybe application, yeah, how to get admission, and we can be talking about F1 and F2 maybe sometime later. So Adekunle, please reach out to me via DM so we can talk about that one. Yeah. So please, if someone is planning to apply for 223, when is the best time to apply, and when is the possible deadline generally? I think I answered this already. Yeah, I think I actually answered this already. Am I correct, Shadi?
Yes, you did. Number one, you have to look at the school and then Google the school and look out for the really specific one for your program. And generally speaking, is around March for international students. Yes, you answered the question already.
To kind of reiterate, so everything deadline is school specific, but generally we have November 15 deadline, December 1st deadline, December 15, January, just like that. So, but everything is still dependent on the school that you're applying to. So check the institution that you're interested in. That's gonna guide you. Yeah. So at this point in time, I don't think any school has. I mean, there's no deadline at this point in time. So you can actually check the schools that you're interested in, and that can actually guide you on, okay, I'm going to apply to this school because the deadline is still very far apart, and I can easily, work on my document that I need. Now we are still in July, yeah, so you have all the time in the world. All right, so please, I did biomedical sciences and at undergraduate level. Epidemiology and biostatistics was part of our coursework. If I don't want to apply to an MPH program, we want to apply to a master's or PhD. Is it possible?
Yes, it is more than possible. In fact, you are the perfect candidate. Like I told you, I did biology. I studied biology for my undergrad. not even biomedical sciences, studied biology, and we had a lot of courseworks that were like, in fact, I did a bit of plant biology, I did a bit of entomology, I did a bit of almost everything, as long as it had to do with biology. I did a bit of almost everything. And interestingly, now, Sheil and myself, we attended the same school, finished from the same department. I'm in biomedical sciences, while his own research is more focused on entomology. That's to let you know that, just like I mentioned before, you do not need to be super rigid on the departments you're focusing on. It is not exactly your undergraduate background that really matters. It is your research interest that really, really matters. So yes, if you have an undergrad in biomedical sciences, you're more than welcome to apply to a biomedical sciences program. And I'm very, very sure you do stand a chance.
All right, so any other question before we wrap up the segment? Any other question? So I don't think we have any more questions. So I would like to appreciate everyone that joined this.
Sorry, I've been trying to raise my hand.
All right, yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much for the session. I have two questions. One is applying to US graduate schools, whereby you're trying to apply for application waivers. What are the things can you advise on the what we should put on the application fee waiver application? What are the content? What should be there? That's the first question. The second question is, this is not to the US, this is to Australia. I messaged a professor of immunology in Australia, and I got a positive response, whereas he actually advised me to apply through advanced master's degree in biological sciences. So, and all of that. So he said he strongly advised me to apply through that route after assessing my application materials, CV, transcript, etc. So I want to confirm: is this like a automatic admission and funding, or do I need to ask for that question based on his recommendation? Thank you.
All right, so to your second question, I don't really have any experience with Australian admission, so I might not be the best person to answer that. So I don't know if you're on Twitter, so I can actually recommend you talk to
Yes.
Aaron. So talk to Aaron Philip. Yeah, he will be the best person to actually answer the question. So I don't want to give you wrong information. I'm not really too conversant with Australian admission process. All right, so your first question, I don't know if Shadi wants to offer that.
Can you help me put the name on the chat box? Thank you.
Please give me your first question again.
So I think he was talking about application fee waiver. What should you do if you want to apply for application fee waiver?
Okay. So if you're going for the tuition fee waiver, most times once you get a graduate assistantship position, you automatically.
Sorry, application fee waiver actually. When you want to, some schools actually give out application fee waiver. So
application fee waiver. Oh, okay. If it's application fee. Now, I haven't had to do that. And in all honesty, I do not know anyone who directly applied to get application fee waiver. The only thing I know about that is there are actually schools that give the application fee waiver themselves. For example, the school I'm in presently, Tulane University, there's application fee waiver for biomedical sciences PhD students. It's there for everyone. So I do not know, but I'm guessing that the way to go about it would be the department probably would have provided information on the steps to follow if you want to have an application fee, if you want to have your application fee waived. So probably there will be a separate application that you have to put in, and I would suggest that you go through that. And if you're not very sure, if there is not enough information on the school's website, you could try to go through the department's contact person and shoot them an email. They are very, very responsive with their emails. You can shoot them an email to get further information on what to do as to get the application fee waiver.
I think to our final question. So what are the challenges for persons with limited laboratory experience for PhD, and how can they improve their chances?
I think for this one, you're good. I had zero lab experience before I came here, except for my okay. I came in with a master's program though. But when I was coming in for my PhD program, I had already gained enough experience for my master's. But the truth is that for my master's program at that time, in fact, my PI mentioned that, and it did not treat me like a master's student, except when I was writing my thesis and all that. It was like we were evaluated on the same pedestal with PhD students. So one thing that I emphasized on, knowing that I did not have a lot of lab experience, one thing that I really, really hammered on was my IT. So knowing that I had always wanted the health line, I made sure that I did my IT in the hospital. So I wrote out all of those experiences, all the tests, the laboratory tests that I carried out then. And it was one of the things that made my advisor interested in talking to me, because he felt I already had the experience. So whatever it is that could just, even in the tiniest bit, look like it's related to your research interest, included on your CV. It doesn't have to sound really, really big or really, really great, or you get what I'm trying to say. It doesn't need to sound as though you've accomplished, you've conquered the world already. As long as it remotely links, you can remotely link it to your future research interest, please include it on your CV, even if it's your IT experience. Yes, it counts. Your internship counts.
All right, thank you so much for that. Yeah. All right, so after one has researched the program's page and there were no specific word count or page limit stated for SOP, in such situations, how many pages should one limit to your SOP? I think I would say two pages. I don't know. Shade, do you have any other opinion about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I would say two, or probably like.
I mean, most times I see whenever you're reaching 3 pages, most times it's repetition of some of those things we mentioned before. So 2 pages is fine. You know, talk about your background, your academic background, research background. Why are you interested in that university? You know, why are you interested in that lab? You know, then your future career plans. So these are things that you can write within 2 pages. Most times when it's reaching 3 pages, 4 pages, it's either you are repeating words or the formatting that you're using is, maybe you're using, if you're using a 12 times New Roman or area as the case may be, and you have maybe at most maybe 1.5 spacing, then 3 pages is too much yeah, I've seen a lot of SOP 3 pages, and no, you don't have to make it that long. Yeah. All right, so please, the last one, how good is the direct PhD in the US? So I don't know. So what I would say is that it depends on your future career plans. So I always advise people, if your end goal, so I'll put it this way: if your end goal is to do a PhD and your CGPA and is very good at the bachelor's level, and your research experience, you know, it's kind of very solid, then just apply for a PhD direct. Don't waste your time. But if you feel like maybe you are not sure of your research interest, and sometimes you might detour at some point, then go for your master's. Then at that point, when you're doing your master's, you might decide. Some people actually started masters, and when they started the master's, they said, no, PhD is not for me. So sometimes doing a master's might help you to actually think about your life afresh. Like, are you sure you want to do a PhD or not? But once you get yourself in that PhD, it might be hard for you to. Yeah, I've seen people start on a PhD and just like they just want to graduate to a master's. So it's a personal decision that you have to take yourself, you know. So, but I always advise people, if you think that you need PhD for your future long career plans, then just go for it. But if you feel like you are not sure of what you want to do, then start with the master's. Then along the way, you can, I mean, there are some programs that if you start with the master's, you can actually upgrade for a PhD. If you feel like you love whoever you are working with and you want to just continue in that line, yeah, then you can go for it. All right, I think we are done with all the questions. Yeah. I don't know if Shadi has any final words before we wrap up.
There's just this question, and I'm not sure if it was the same one you answered. This person is asking where you can apply to a PhD program with a bachelor's degree. And does Tulane accept bachelor's degree for the PhD Biomedical Sciences? I think just like we mentioned already, you have to look into, there is no hard and fast rule. There are school-specific requirements and program-specific requirements. So you have to look into the specific school that you're interested in and the specific program that you're interested in to know if they require a master's program or not. But most schools that I know of do not, because even most of the American citizens, like the students, the local students here, they go directly for PhD from their undergrad. Most people do not go through the master's. So I think pretty much a lot of schools would accept a bachelor's degree directly into their PhD program. And yes, I think Tulane accepts bachelor's degree for the PhD Biomedical Sciences. A lot of my cohorts have just their bachelor's degree. But again, like I said, just to be on the safe side, go through the departmental requirements, email the contact person if you have questions, just to be very, very, very sure.
All right, so Kelvin, so you don't need to use a double space for your SOP, yeah? You don't have to use a double space. 1.5 is fine, yeah. All right, thank you everyone for joining this session. Yeah, I hope you guys learned a lot and it's not a waste of time. I would like to appreciate Folasade Adekanmbi for the wonderful presentation and staying behind to answer the questions. And also Opeoluwa, who just left because of the program that is currently in here. So thank you everyone. I really appreciate. So please, the recordings are going to be made available at some point. You can reach out to me on Twitter. Then I think I sent some email. I sent emails out to some people. So if you want to still ask some questions, you can just reach me directly to my email. All right. So thank you everyone. Yeah. See ya some other time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Yeah.
Thank you.